So what I want to talk to you guys about today is the essentials of modules 5 and 6. And they both have to do with a very practical approach in getting a film made. It's really all about how do we value it? How do we elevate the value of a film? How do we package it? What is the right package? How do we optimize our business plan? How do we optimize our finance plan? What kind of sales agents should we be looking for? What should the deals be? We're going to talk more about the deals and related terms in the contractual essential agreement module, which is I believe it's next week or the week or the other one after that, where we're going to talk about more in detail about contractual things we should just know and ask for. Today, though, I want to kind of dive into this in a way where we can address some of these things as well. Robert, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, because for some reason I thought I heard you say something. So as always, I'm going to walk you through a PowerPoint that I will share with you after the class. I'll share the recording, of course, with everyone. And then you can always interrupt me as I'm giving you the presentation, and then we'll discuss your questions. So no need for you to wait for me to be done or anything. So let me see that I can share my screen. Screen 1 is being shared. Do you guys see the PowerPoint presentation? Yeah, great. So what we're covering today in our third session, and this is a week early, so you haven't seen any of these materials yet because they will be opening up on Monday. So when you read through them, you'll be like, this is what Jeanette meant. This is what she was talking about. So a lot of it will register a little more then. But even now, if you have questions, again, please interrupt me. So I want to talk to you first about, let's go back to this one here, about the steps we need to take when we have an idea that we like, even if it's just, we write something down on a piece of paper that we decide we want to develop, or we're excited about a book that we want to option, or we have a screenplay writer with an original script approach us and they want us to option their script. All the different scenarios that can create an idea that will be made for film or TV or streamer will be discussed today. And then we're going to a little bit talk about what stories are selling, what genres are selling today and why. So you get an understanding of the different genres that are easier to sell versus others that might be harder to sell. And it's good to know. We're going to talk about securing and clearing rights and the related chain of title, which is the rights chain from the inception of the idea to the point this idea came to you. And it's different with every project. And we're going to talk about the various scenarios that can apply. And then we're talking about the packaging process, when we package a director and when we package cast and how that works. And we're a little bit talking about the chicken and egg situation that producers always deal with. This is part of the job description. Unfortunately, there's no way around it, but it is doable because otherwise no one would be making movies. And then we're going to talk about the understanding of market valuation of a project and how we can adjust that and optimize that. And then for the second part of the conversation, we will talk about the marketplace. What does it look like today? What does it look like for buyers, distributors, but also investors? What does the marketplace need for us to give to the marketplace? And then what do investors need from us? And how do we combine these two? And how do we actually protect and generate revenues? So those are the things I want to address in today's session. So we'll start with the steps from script to screen. There are 5 stages in that process. There is the rights, the development, the financing, the production, and the revenue stage. And each of those have different components connected to them that we'll address today. The rights stage is the idea phase. You select an idea that you like, and it could be from any source. It could be a newspaper article that you read that you feel has merit to be made into a movie, TV series, a documentary series, a feature documentary, any of these things. It could be a book that you've read where you think this book would make a great movie or make a great franchise or a great TV series. It could be normal. Most of the time, what happens is a writer has a script and approaches us as producers to say, I have this script and I would really like you to look at it and tell me whether or not you think this is something you would want to produce and finance. So that's most often the case. It could also be that you're a writer and you wrote a script and you want to get it made. Could be that you're an actor and you want to take your career in your own hands to say, I don't want to wait until the phone rings and someone sends me a script. I'm working with this writer and I really want to take matters in my own hands and I want to move this process forward. So there are different ways on how ideas come to us and how we can then handle them. What is our job is to make sure that whatever idea comes to us, we do check the chain of title, meaning where has this idea been before? So for example, if it's a book, you read the book, you would contact the publisher of the book and the publisher might say to you, well, Universal Studios already bought the rights. This is when this conversation ends. The publisher could also say to you, the rights are available. They have never been optioned. Let's have an optioning conversation and a purchase price conversation. So here you would talk to the book publisher and say, I want to option this for a year with another extension for another year. And the option price I offer you for this book is $5,000 for the year. And if I extend it, I'm going to pay another $5,000. And the purchase price for these book rights for this movie that I'm making for $10 million is $100,000. The purchase price is not payable until the day the financing closes, the day you start shooting, the day you have all the money together and we're getting the ball on the roll with the production. That's when you pay the $100,000. The option fee is due right away when you have that conversation. In an ideal scenario, you would ask the publisher to include the money that you already have paid. Maybe it's $5,000 because you got the movie done within the first year. Maybe it's $10,000 because it took you 2 years to get the movie into production. You ask the publisher to deduct this from you, from the purchase price, meaning you'll say, I would like to apply the option fee to the purchase price, in which case the $100,000 purchase and then what is payable at the time of production when all the money is in the bank account is either $90,000 or $95,000. These are conversations that happen. These are also conversations that happen with agents that represent screenplay writers. So let's look at that scenario. You have a screenplay writer who you work with. He's written a script. And you want to talk to them, meaning the writer and their agents, about optioning and then purchasing the script. So the conversation is similar. How much am I having to pay for the option? The price is usually less if this writer is not experienced or is not with the Writers Guild of America, meaning a member of the Writers Guild of America. And they usually get less money then. If the person is with the Writers Guild of America, you can lean on their minimums. That's what I usually do. So you can go on the Writers Guild of America website. You can look at what should I be charged for an option, a script, maybe even a treatment in between for a movie that is $10 million, or for a movie that is $5 million, or for a movie that is $3 million. And I mentioned these 3 different budgets because the pricing changes with the budget size. So what you'll find on the Writers Guild of America website is that the option and purchase price and treatment prices vary depending on what the budget is. And that's important to know. What I do when I work with writers who are not part of Writers Guild, I usually still give them the minimum Writers Guild, because if it's not making a big dent in my budget, I want them to have that. And if it's not possible, then obviously if the movie is very much already maxed out and we need to save in every line item, then it's a different conversation. But for the most part, I adhere to Writers Guild minimums for someone that comes to me with a script that they want me to option as a producer. What can also happen is, and it's the same for the publishing house scenario and the screenplay writer scenario, is that the rights have been with someone else before, another producer who tried to make this happen. So for the publishing conversation, it's a little different than for the writer conversation. Publishing house would say to you, well, the rights were with Universal, but they have expired and they're now available. In that case, for the most part, these rights are free and clear for you to do what we just described in the first scenario, negotiate an option price, negotiate a purchase price, and put both of this in an agreement with the publishing house. Now, with the screenplay writer, it's a little different. The screenplay writer whose script you like, you now want to option and create a purchase price scenario, tells you this movie was with another producer, any production company, doesn't matter. Plan B, Brad Pitt's company, even though it was just sold, so no longer Brad Pitt. But let's see, Plan B had the script and says, yeah, well, we have the script and we developed it. And while we developed it, we had development cost. And these development costs were $500,000. I'm just making this up. But, you know, development costs could be anywhere from 20 to 500,000 to $1 million. You don't know. You don't know how much money they spent trying to get this movie made. It's an important conversation because here's what happens. Many times, the development costs are part of what is called the turnaround. They become like a lien against the IP. So Plan B had the script before you and said, well, we tried to get this movie made for 2 years. We spent $500,000. We didn't get it made. We let the rights lapse. So that's why the rights are now available for you to purchase and to option, right? But because Plan B had it before and because they spent $500,000, they might say to you, Plan B, that is work that we have done on this movie because we spent a lot of money on this, even though we didn't get it made, but this movie is now a turnaround. We want to get paid. The conversation then usually is more like, well, we can't really pay your full $500,000 because we're making this movie for $5 million and that would be 10%. And that's just not something this movie can afford. You wanted to maybe make the movie for 50 million, which you can because you're Plan B, but we are independent producers. We're only making it for 5 million. So I can't pay you $500,000, dear Plan B. And then Plan B might say to you, you know what? Why don't we do 100? Give us something. What can you afford? So there is a conversation that is a negotiation about what is called the turnaround fees that are connected to an IP. This only applies if the idea that you're working on, if the project that you're acquiring has been with another producer before. So let's look at the scenario where you have an idea and you're not a screenplay writer, but you're hiring a screenplay writer to write your screenplay. The question then is, well, who owns the rights? Because the screenplay writer will establish 120 pages, let's say 100, between 100 and 120 pages of a screenplay based on your one-pager idea that says, I want to make a movie about this with these characters. And it's my idea, Jeanette's idea. It's not your, Otto, the writer's idea, it's mine. I would then do what is called a writer for hire agreement with the screenplay writer, where I pay them to write the script for me. But in that case, it's a service they provide for me and they do not have any rights. If I don't like their script, I can fire them. I hire another writer. If I don't like that, I fire them. I get another writer. I mean, I hopefully don't have to do that because it's going to be expensive every time. But the point is, there is no rights transfer from the writer to you because you had the idea and they're simply executing it. So that's an important component to know about because oftentimes have I heard about writers who work with producers who had an idea and they then say to them, well, you didn't go into detail as much as I did on my 100-page script. And they're right, because you didn't write a 100-page script. You gave them a page that says, here's my idea, and here's my characters, and here's what I want you to write about. However, they don't have the rights to that idea because the idea is yours. And even if they threaten, which I've seen, to stop the whole production and threaten the chain of title because they feel they have rights to the idea, you would win that argument because you signed a writer for hire deal with them that makes very clear in that agreement, and it must, that the script is based on your idea and that you're hiring them as a service provider. Yes, Susanna.
Sorry, just realized I was muted. So would that also come into play, like if you have bought the option for a book that you want to adapt. And then the writer would be a writer for hire.
Very clever question. You're absolutely right. This is exactly the same scenario. You just want to go and you say, I read this book that I really like. I'm going to now hire a writer to write this book and make a screenplay out of it, or make it into a TV series and write a Bible, whatever you decide to do with it, or both, could be. You control the rights in that situation. The writer is a service provider and would work with you based on a writer for hire agreement. It's the same situation. Thank you for that. That's a great question. The only time the writer owns the rights, if it's their idea. That's the only time they own the rights. If it's in full screenplay that they have written. Now, if a writer comes to you and says, I have a treatment idea here, and I'm giving you a one-pager, it's my idea. You'll say, well, that sounds great, but give me a script, write it up. So you let them do that, because there's no point in you doing any deal with anyone based on a one-pager, because in that situation, they would have to write the script and then give that to you, and they would have to write that on spec, meaning you're not paying for that. You will then engage with them through an option and purchase agreement once the script is completed and has been sent to you. But in your situation, Susanna, you're right. This would be subject to a writer for hire agreement, right? So let's say you, Susanna, you have an idea and you wrote it down on a piece of paper that is a page. What you want to do immediately is protect the idea. You want to register it with the Writers Guild of America website, pay $20, put the title and put your name on, so that you can actually prove it was your idea. Because they might say, you know what? I registered my screenplay and it's in there. And there's no registration from you with the WGA or with the Copyright Office. So I was first. And that always creates problems. So whenever anyone has an idea that they feel they want to make into a movie, a series, or documentary content, register it with the WGA at least. You can do also Copyright Office. I think Copyright Office is $10, WGA is $20. It's not, it might have changed the fees. It's not that expensive, and it makes a lot of things a lot easier because the chain of title starts with that registration. That's where the chain starts. And from there it goes. And it goes. And you might say, well, I had the idea, I registered it with the WGA, then this writer owned it, wrote it. I didn't make it with this writer, but I hired another writer that wrote it. And then you might talk to me and say, Jeanette, let's co-produce it together. And then I option it from you as a producer, because you option it from the writer. So now I register it with, obviously, I register my option with the Copyright Office and the WGA as well, at least with the Copyright Office, that is. So, and then I say, well, I don't want to make it. And then you go to another producer. So all these registrations for everyone that works with you in conjunction in getting this made, if it's like someone like me that's a producer and you also produce it, even if it's a co-production agreement, we will require the rights, because otherwise we're not working with you. Even if you have all kinds of rights deal on your end, we would require the rights, and anyone that wants to work with a writer or producer with a project would want the rights, and we would register them. So this chain will basically register all the different people that have had an option on an idea before it gets to you. And it needs to be clean, meaning a proper lawyer who is specialized in clearances for rights is going to be engaged around the time we're in the closing, where we put all the monies together to confirm the clearance of the chain of title, because that's an important requirement for a bank, an investor, and a distributor to even do a deal with you. So the chain of title report is going to be a termination, a material term that will find its way into all the agreements that you have. It doesn't matter who it is. If it's a finance agreement, a distribution agreement, any kind of co-production agreement, and the bond company insurance agreement, whatever agreement it is, the chain of title report and it being clean and clear is going to be a requirement for any of these deals to materialize. So that's important for you to know. That's why the clearance of the chain of title is essential. So any questions around this? I'm going to give you one other example that can create headaches, because we're talking about headaches here, right? So guess what? I'm working on an idea that I came up with for a TV show. This actually happened to me. So I'm working on this idea that I came up with. I'm putting it together as a TV series. I'm hiring this writer, and he's writing up a Bible, and we're writing the pilot together. I do a deal with him right off for hire. Everything's clean. So the one day he calls me up and we're having a conversation about some scenes, some act character. And he mentions to me that his wife, who writes books, who's a novel writer, had this amazing idea about this character and, you know, shifting in this and this and this direction, yada, yada, doesn't matter. An idea that he then implemented in his version of the script. So I was like, hold your horses. Now I need your wife to sign a waiver to assign all these rights to us. Otherwise, I cannot even take this draft. Thank God I did, because they got divorced. Point is, if I wouldn't have signed that waiver, the wife could have come later and said, yeah, you know that character that you have in there? Guess what? That whole thing was my idea, and I told my husband about it, and he put it in there, and it wasn't his idea. And I would have had to pay her. It happened to me on another movie where one of the producers who was on the project before me in the chain of title couldn't get the movie made. Very big A-level producer who shall remain nameless. Big guy, much bigger than me. Had the project, couldn't get it made. I got it made. All of a sudden, I get a call from the bond company saying, yeah, the chain of title is not clean. And I'm like, what? What are you even talking about? Even the law firm didn't catch it. So there you go. But the producer knew, because they're much more experienced than me, and they did this on purpose a little bit. They knew we were in the closing process. They called up the completion bond company and said, guess what? We had this project before, and I, the producer, had this idea that the writer at the time, who wasn't even my writer, because I hired another writer because I didn't like that script. My writer wrote a whole new script that I was then able to do and finance and produce. But this guy's writer had put this producer's idea into the script, and he did not sign a waiver. And no one knew, of course, that his idea was in there, because none of us knew. We didn't know. And who knows if it even was true? Could have been also just made up, because he got up out of bed, had a wrong cup of coffee, and decided, I'm going to give Jeanette a hard time. And sure as hell he did, because the bond company made me pay him $75,000 for something he nor we could even prove to be real. People do this nonsense because it's Hollywood. So your writer has to sign a waiver to say, no one gave him any ideas. These are his ideas, her ideas, free and clear. And if any claim comes out that is from someone that he didn't tell us about, he or she didn't tell us about, it comes out of their writer's fee and not my producer fee or my fee from the budget. That lesson I learned very hard. So I want you to know this. When you do a deal with a writer, you say, okay, anyone you worked with on this? Anyone who has it before? Anyone who gave you ideas? Tell me who they are and what the deal is. They all need to say waivers. And if he's like, yeah, I don't remember, I don't think so, you say, okay, then you're going to sign a waiver that if someone comes out of the woodwork chasing me for an idea they gave you 500 years ago, you'll be paying for it. They need to sign that. So lawyers don't really think about these things, and producers half the time forget it. But because I had a painful $75,000 lesson, trust you me, in every agreement I do, this will be in there from now on. It's sad that we have to go through this nonsense to then learn our lessons, but it was an expensive lesson that I was not going to repeat. So no, you don't have to take that lessons because you're now smarter. Any questions?
Yes, Janet, I have a question around registering the copyright. So what about international projects? Meaning, I know some of the British writers are also part of the writers in America, right? So should I just do it out of...
Yeah, I would just do it. Doesn't matter where. Yes, safety. No matter where the project happens, no matter where you're from, it doesn't matter because the rules and regulations are the same. So you can register it with the Writers Guild of America because they register every project. You can register it with the Copyright Office because they register every project. And it doesn't matter what location you're in. So for that answer, I would say just do it. I mean, if there is a local thing in England or wherever you're from that you could register on top of it, yeah, then do that too. But those two entities I would do for sure, no matter where you are. Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, on the chain of title, that's basically an attorney that needs to do that for you, right? Are there any other ways to get that done, to get a title?
Well, yeah, the attorney that does it. The last time I used them, I think I paid $2,500. So it's not the end of the world. The attorney that I've used and most independent producers use, I think, is Dennis Angel. He is in New York, and they have a website, and all they do is this. It's basically like an escrow kind of attorney company. But you don't need to do it until you're closing, because it's not money you want to spend now. The way you do it is you're going to ask the person that gives you this project, where has it been before? And have them put you with you in writing where it has been before. And then you call up whoever is on that list that had it before and say, is there any turnaround on this project? That's what you do, and that's how you know. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So now we got the rights secured. Everyone's a happy camper, and we're going into development after we secure the rights. Do not, I repeat, do not work on anything that you do not control, where you don't have the rights. Many scenarios, friends come together. One friend says, oh, you can go, I wrote the script, but you can go run with it and just go do your deals. And when you got a deal, we do a deal. Hell no, because here's what's going to happen. Friend A says, I'm a screenplay writer. I'm giving you, friend B, the producer, my project for free. You don't have to pay me an option. Go and then sell it. And then you're like, shoot, I got great news. I sold it to Netflix. And then writer A says, oh, now that it's with Netflix, I was thinking, maybe I'll give you the rights for 10,000, but now that it's sold with Netflix, it's going to be 100,000. Happens all the time. So the answer to that scenario is, thank you, my friend A, that you want to give me your project for free. I would still like to put an option agreement in place for $1. And you make a picture of the check for $1 that you gave to the person, and you attach it to the agreement, which is an option and purchase agreement. Same thing. But you need to do this in writing. I don't care if it's your grandmother that is writing the script. You will not just trust someone to say to you, yeah, just run with it. I give you the authorization and we'll figure it out later. That is 99% a bad scenario. So if they are so generous in giving you this project for free, let them sign a $1 option, because then you know they're for real and they're not going to haunt you later. So please do this. So now we have our idea, and we're developing the story, we're developing the Bible, or we're developing a sizzle reel. Like for a documentary series or a documentary, you're going to have a sizzle reel, like a little, 1 to 2 minute reel that suggests the premise of the show, if you want. That's normal for documentary and reality television stuff. For narrative film, TV series, we don't need sizzle reels. We need pitch decks, which is, what we work on towards the end of the course. That's kind of our sales paper, if you want. So those pitch deck business plans is what sells our project. But in the meantime, we need to prepare for all of that. And the main thing you do, and the most important thing you do, is you develop the story. Of the 100% of scripts that I receive in my career, and there's many scripts I read, 99% of them are not great. But they have a good, maybe one or the other has good bones. And there is a good premise. We producers find ourselves most of the time in a situation that we have to develop the story for it to be better, for it to be stronger, for it to adhere to the demands of the market. Because they're different today than they were even 5 years ago. Stories have different plots, different levels, characters are developed differently, predictability is not a thing. I mean, there are 1,000 things that we as producers need to address with the writers who don't know what the marketplace is demanding. So the development takes a bit of time, and you really do need to take your time to make the script the best it can be, because whoever you sent it to, a buyer, a streamer, a studio, an investor, will only read it once. And to be precise, they'll only read the first 30 pages. They'll never continue if the first 30 pages are not great. The first 30 pages set up the premise and the character and the journey that this character is taking and the movie is taking. If that setup, which we call exposition, is not done properly, it shows us that the writer doesn't know what they're doing. It shows us that the producer has no idea on how to set up story. They have no sense of story. And why would anyone want to work with people like that? They throw it and say, thank you, we're passing. So the first 30 pages are, in fact, the most important ones, because when you hook the reader in, they'll continue. And then in the second that something weird happens and they're like, yeah, you know, now I, the reader, am a little turned off by the story. But at this point, they invested enough to then have a conversation with you to say, you know, I like the script for the most part, but here are my notes. And then you have a development conversation with the buyer, the distributor, the streamer, the studio, the network station to continue and develop the script to their liking. But if you don't watch what you're giving, and if you think you have the best thing after sliced bread, you're mistaken. Because a lot of times these buyers, not a lot of times, normally they read 100 scripts. They read a lot of scripts. And because they read so much, they only read the first 30 pages. And they will only continue reading to page 31st or so if they like what they read on the first 30 pages. So that's extremely important. So you need to get feedback for your script from people that are not relatives and friends, but industry executives, and not just some paid for coverage service either. It needs to be real industry feedback. Maybe like a sales agent that you know you're not going to go with, but you want their feedback. Maybe someone that you know is not going to be someone you're doing a deal with, but you want their feedback and they're professional and they don't have an agenda. You need real feedback and you need to apply that. You need to think about that very hard. And if you have a writer who doesn't want to do changes, you need to change the writer because that's not going to work. The writer has to understand that they're not in the decision-making stool anymore the minute you signed an option and a purchase. It is now your train that you are driving, and you need to drive it home. And the only way to drive it home is if the story and the script is very good. So you need to really be careful about what you send out at what time. If you send it to the director too early, no one is going to attach. If you send it to, let's say you have a director, but no cast is responding, you have a problem. The minute you can't get a director, there is already a problem with the script. The minute you have a director and you can't get the cast you want, there is a problem with the script. The minute you have a director and you have the cast and you can't get a sales agent, there's something wrong with the script. It always leads back to the script. That is why the door will only open once. You want to walk through with the strongest story you can walk through. So there needs to be time spent on this, and there needs to be a lot of attention spent on this to make sure the script is unique and outstandingly written. Define talent. What does that mean? Well, talent is cast and director. We're defining it by using an experienced director. Sorry for the first timers on this call, but when you're a first-time producer, you're going to have an experienced director, and the other way around. If you're an experienced producer, you can maybe work with a first-time director. So there are things like that. But one of the two needs to have experience, because otherwise they're not going to go anywhere with anything. So point is, you have to find a director first. And you're going to talk to them about the project, and that director then is an important component to attach the cast, because the cast wants to feel comfortable working with the director because they are the ones making their career happen or killing their career because they put them in a stupid movie that they all look stupid. So problem is, actors don't want to look stupid. They want to look like they really gave a great performance, and that is driven by what the director does to them, how the director guides them, and how the movie is and how good the script is. So talent is going to be very picky on who the director is. Not so picky on who the producer is, but definitely picky on who the director is. So that's something you need to know. You also need to think about very early on in development, where am I shooting this movie? Because cast particularly doesn't want to go everywhere. If you tell them we're going to shoot this movie in a very, I don't know, unpleasant location, it's going to be harder to attach. You know, if you go into a location where it's really great and people want to go there, that's a little easier. But for you, the main point is, I'm going to go to a location where I can get free money, like we learned last week. Free money, tax incentives, subsidies and grants, guiding the decision. Obviously, the decision is also guided by the script. If the script plays on Mars, you're not going to shoot it in Manhattan. So point is, the story needs to match the location. But oftentimes, the way the story is written, you do have options for locations, and you can use locations that are in incentivized regions in the US or abroad. But that's important because the location needs to be defined. You will have to have a pitch deck business plan. There's no way around it. So if you can find a way to make one during this course, pitch it to us at the end. It is worth your while because you're going to have to do it no matter what. So that's something to think about. This pitch deck is not just a pitch deck that, you shop your rear around like a mood board with character descriptions and summary. No, this pitch deck, as you've seen from the exercise that I've announced in week 1, includes financial and distribution information. It includes all the things that make the movie a business, not just a great idea. So that is very important for you to consider because it's going to drive the train forward on how you go through development. This pitch deck, together with the script, goes to the director. It goes to the talent that represents the cast. It goes to all the financiers. It goes to the banks. It goes to the sales agent. It goes everywhere the script goes. It just is an important component to your presentation. And the reason is people want to make money with this. And the reason is people want to know that you know what a producer is supposed to do. They want to know you understand these 5 stages with your eyes closed. They do not want to educate you. They do not want to work with first-timers. They want to work with first-timers that know what they're doing. That is why the pitch deck is important, because it represents that even though you might not have done a movie before, you know exactly what your job is, and you're very serious about getting it done. That's why the pitch deck is important. So you attach the talent and the director in the development phase, and you do that with a project-related LLC. Very important. Film A LLC, Film B LLC, Film 3C LLC. Every project must have its own LLC, its own company, so that it can ring fence from other things you might be doing. Because if it tanks, none of the other projects that you're working on are impacted. So please think about this. You can have a production company, production house, LLC, and then that production company can produce movie A. So the production house LLC will own the project movie A LLC 100%. And that's okay, but you do need that legal differentiation. And the production LLC is the one that enters into all the agreements, the rights agreements, the cast agreements, the director agreements, the sales agency agreement, any kind of co-production agreement. Any agreement that's connected to your movie is going to be done with the project LLC. That's very important. So keep that in mind. So you've done in the development phase, the attaching, and we're going to go through how those steps work in a minute, but you've done development, you sorted out your financing, at least have an idea where you're going, you talk to some sales agents, you got some, basic estimates, you're still trying to figure out what you want to make the movie for exactly, because you only have a range during development. That's all you can have, because you're still putting all the pieces together. There's no way for you to know what the movie actually costs until you go into the financing part. You don't know. Because you need to know how is it going to be valued by the sales agent, and then you know what you should be spending. It can't go, it has to be their feedback. So when we go into financing, we're doing a few things. We're talking to sales agents first. We're going to talk to the sales agent and say, listen, dude, I have this movie. Here's the script. It's fantastic, of course, because I developed it to the T. And I have this director attached, who is so-and-so, and we're thinking of attaching this and this and this and this cast. So here's a list of people that we think should play those 2 lead roles. You're not going to send out any offers until the sales agent tells you cast A is better than cast B. Cast C is better than cast D. They'll give you feedback, and that feedback is important because you need to know what the actors are valued at in the current marketplace. And only the sales agent knows that. So they'll give you feedback, and then you can go and make offers and get your cast attached, but only then. So based on the feedback on your targeting these cast members, these actors, the sales agent will put sales estimates together that say, here's my estimate sheet, here's my ask sheet for all these countries, here's my take worst case scenario sheet for all these countries, subject to the movie being this title, this genre, directed by this person with this cast in the lead targeted. This is how specific the sales estimates are. They will take all of this under consideration. The genre, the script, the cast, the director, all of it. That is why that's important to have. You don't have to actually have it yet, meaning you don't have to have the cast attached yet, but you need to know who you're going for. And that is something you decide together with the sales agent. And then you start talking to the sales agent about pre-sales, because you need to start putting your finance plan together. So the sales agent will say to you, well, if you have this director, okay, and you have this cast, I can make probably 30% pre-sales in connection with the take numbers that I gave you. But if you choose this cast, not only will the sales estimates go down, but I don't think I can make these pre-sales. This is important information. So you then have to decide, well, what is best for the finance plan? What is best for me? And the ideal would be that the sales agent tells you, with this cast in a lead role, I can make about a 30%, like a third of the budget in pre-sales. And here's what my take numbers will look like. And they're ideally somewhere in the 70% range at minimum. That would be great. 70% being 70% of the budget. Pre-sales, 30% meaning 30% of the budget. It all relates to the budget. And so they'll tell you what they're comfortable doing. And normally bankable sales agent will stick to what they tell you. They're not just going to throw a number out and say, well, I really like Jeanette's movie and I want it, so I'm going to tell her what she wants to hear. No go. When you go to a sales agent and you say to them, I'm making this movie for $10 million, and they say to you, oh, great, I'm going to make it 20% international. And you're going to have to stop the conversation right there, because this guy's dreaming. It's never going to happen. And it's not someone you want to work with. You want to work with someone who says, $10 million movie, I might make you 7. I think that's more realistic. Okay, if someone says, well, I think I can only make you 5 million with this movie, you need to ask why. Because there might be some valid reason there that you're not aware of. Just don't go with the person that offers you the most money, because that's usually a red flag. You then also do another thing, and you call the bank. You call Comerica, you call Pacific Mercantile, you call East West Bank, you call Chase, you call Union, and you call the entertainment departments and you say, I'm working on this movie, I'm working with the sales agent. Is this a bankable sales agent with your entertainment division? And they'll tell you it is or it's not. And when the sales agent is not bankable, you can't work with them, because the pre-sales will not be banked with this bank, and you're not going to get a gap loan with this bank. You need to know this in advance. So you got to remember that you have to work with a verified bankable sales agent. And of all the sales agents that are selling the movie, when you ever go to the American Film Market down there in Santa Monica in November, I will tell you that maybe 20% of them are bankable. I'm guessing, but I think that's about right. So a majority of them are not, and that doesn't help you. So you need to be with someone who is bankable. And the way you find out before even calling the bank is you call them up and you say, listen, I love your numbers. I like the fact that you're excited about my movie. Who are you usually banking with? Who are your other producers bank with when they do movies with you? And they'll tell you, yeah, no, our movies are usually banked by Comerica or by Union Bank. And you just go there. I mean, that's an easy one. Or they might even say to you, yeah, you know what? We have investors that bank them for me. So I don't even need to go to the bank. You're like, okay, great. As long as someone's cash flowing the pre-sales and giving me a gap loan, we're good to go. But you need this information, and most sales agent will give you that information. So the bank will then say to you, okay, we're working with a bank, with the sales agent that we are deeming bankable. You now have these pre-sales done based on the script, the director being attached, and the cast being attached. They now were able to do pre-sales, and they were able to do what they suggested, which is about 30%, right? The bank will then give you what is called a term sheet, and the term sheet will show you exactly how much money they're giving you for each contract. And it might vary, as we talked about last week. Is it a tier 1 distributor? Is it a tier 2 distributor? Meaning, are these buyers ranked with the bank in a certain way? And that will dictate what the term sheet will say. The term sheet will say exactly, this contract with this distributor / buyer is $500,000. I'm giving you $300 for it. Or I'm giving you $500 for it. So they'll tell you exactly how much money they'll give you for each contract. Yes, Ellen?
Sorry, this is a question I should have asked earlier, but back to attaching a director. Say you're like an inexperienced producer, and you're trying to like bank on getting that good director. Do you just like find out who their agent is and call them?
Right.
And how does one, as an inexperienced producer, convince an experienced director's agent to take them seriously?
No, Alan, it's a great question, and I would have jumped into that later in the packaging process, but let's talk about it now. When you are an inexperienced producer and you put your pitch deck together, you need to have someone in there that has experience. And usually that's an EP that you do kind of a development deal with. So you want someone who is experienced to be at your side and guiding you and give you basically their name. It's going to cost a little money, but it will make everyone feel a lot more comfortable working with you. And you only have to do that once, because after that movie, everyone will know about you. But it's a little bit the price of entry that you have to pay, because unless your project is so super exciting that the director reads it and says, I don't care if you've ever produced a movie, I want to do this, which could happen, it's going to be harder for you to get through the door. So it does help to have an EP on your side. And the way you find them is you have a movie that you want to make, and you're looking at who has done something similar than this that I want to make in the independent world, right? And you have a certain comparable. You need to put comparables in your pitch deck anyway, so you'll see what your comparables are. And then you look at, well, who produced these? And we're talking about producers. We're not talking about the executive producers who finance them, even though you should write those down too, because those could be people that you can get money from. But let's look at the producers. And you can say to them, listen, I have this project. It's amazing. I want to send it to you, dear producer, for you to maybe become a consulting producer for me on this project. Consulting producer is great because it is not the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting is still done by you. And if it's an interesting project that they really like a good script, like me, they don't find very many good scripts, which is why they're always looking for good scripts. So it's sometimes welcomed by a producer like me to say, oh, I'm happy to guide you because this is a great project I'd love to have my name on. And that's why they do it. They don't have to do the heavy lifting. They tell you what the lifting you need to do, and you go and do it. And they are going to be connected to a project that's great. And you do a deal with them where you say, I'm going to pay you this during development phase, and I'm going to pay you a fee if and when it comes to fruition. That's the deal you usually make. And that is very often done. And it's done by a lot of experienced producers because we're always looking for good projects. So it's not that difficult. But you have to be honest and say, I need a guiding consulting producer and I'm willing to do a development deal. And then they make that decision based on the script, because they're not going to put their name on something that they don't stand behind. But then the script sells itself, and you need to know what a good story should look like. Otherwise, you should be doing something else. The story sense is important. And then with that in mind, you can go and say, dear agent of director so-and-so, I'm producing this movie with so-and-so, consulting producer, and I would like to make an offer to your director. And now they see, it's Alan and Mr. or Miss Experience that we've heard of before. And then they'll take this serious. That's how it works. You only do this once, you do it for the first time, and then after that, people will know about you because you've done a movie that people have heard of. Even if it doesn't become a big success, you made a movie and that's something. And then you don't need to attach people anymore. Unless the movie is a total disaster, and then you do. But let's not hope that that is going to happen. But this is how you do it. This is how I've done it. This is how everyone does it that goes into the industry. Make sense? Good. Great question. All right, let's continue here. So we're talking about pre-sales, and then the bank will give you a term sheet on what the pre-sale would look like and how they're going to bank it. How much money are they giving you for each of these contracts that the sales agent has realized for you as a pre-sale? And then the question is for the bank, and that will also be reflected in the term sheet, what are the costs connected to these deals? How much interest are you paying? What is the loan fee that you're paying? And it will show you, this term sheet, what the costs are for the pre-sales and the gap loan. The gap interest is often a little higher than the pre-sale interest, so you'll see what that is. And then you also see how much gap they're willing to give you. Because you might have thought, I'm going to get 50% of my unsold rights because I have a bankable director, I have all the pre-sales they want, and that's what they should give me because Jeanette said so. And then you'll be surprised when they say, we're not going to give you 20% of the budget, even though you have all the elements in place. At this moment, right now, the way the market is going, we're only giving you 10% or 15% of the budget as a gap loan. And it's important for you to know early on when you get the term sheet, because you need to know how much equity you need to raise and how many other finance sources you need to raise. So this is important information for you to have, and it can go either way. So the term sheet will tell you how much gap you're going to get, how much of the pre-sale you're going to get cash flowed, and what are the costs for both of these things. And then you want to talk about distribution options, potentially for domestic. It is very difficult in my experience, and you might have the amazing project where everything is possible, to attach domestic distribution early on. I've only done it a few times. I think I mentioned this. For the most part, my movies and TV shows have sold after, well, mainly movies. TV shows I usually do have domestic. But for the films, they're usually sold after the film is finished, because the film can speak for itself. It is strong, has good actors, strong director, and it sells based on what it is. So many times, domestic buyers want to see the final product. Toronto Film Festival, Sundance, American Film Market, Cannes Film Festival, that's why they want to see the movie. So you can try to get domestic, but I would say don't expect it to happen. And that's okay. It's nothing wrong with that. You want to then secure your finance sources in getting everyone ready. You want to know there is a loan because you have the term sheet. You know where you're going to shoot. So you're going to talk to the bank also about giving you a loan for the incentives that you are thinking about establishing because you're shooting the movie, let's say in New Mexico. And banks usually cash flow incentives as well. Or you go to an incentive specialized lender, as we talked about last week, and they will cash flow the incentive. So you're going to do that too in the financing phase. You're going to talk to the bond company, of course, in that phase as well, if you have a bond company insurance to insure your movie. And you're going to talk to them about what's the timing on closing. Do I need a bridge loan? Where are we? And then just to prepare yourself, you're going to talk to a bridge lender as well. Someone that comes to mind that I've worked with is Blue Rider. Blue Rider does bridge loans, and the name of the person that owns the company is Walter Justin. I mean, I don't know if they still do it, but they did it when we did our last movies. That's just someone to talk to about bridge lending. And then you want to talk to an advertising company about branding. You don't want to leave that on the table, and you want to talk to the music investment company about giving you money for the publishing rights, for the music publishing rights. So those conversations all happen at the same time. They happen at this time because you do have enough for them to look at and make a decision whether or not they want to be a part of the movie. You have pre-sales, you have your cast, you have your director, you have a strong script. And now the brands know our brand is going to be associated with this director and this cast and this story, and it's going to be distributed this way with this sales agent, which is the things they need to know. And then that's how you get the ball rolling also for the music investor who needs these same things. So you can have these conversations early on and start putting the first deals in place and source all your different financiers and get these deals in place. Most of the time for the brand integration, they'll send you a draft. For the equity, for the loans, they send you drafts. For the incentives, they send you drafts. So you don't have to draft those agreements, or your lawyers will not draft them, but your lawyer should review them. So those things will happen for the bridge lender, the same thing. The only deal that would probably initiate with you is an investment deal with the equity investor. That's something that either you draft with your lawyer, or they will send you a draft that was drafted by their lawyer based on terms that you guys agreed. The collection agent is important to also include early on to establish the collection agent management agreement, which is called CAMA in short, which includes all the parties. Everyone who gives you money, everyone who is included in distribution, everyone who is included in the talent side of things, the director and the cast, everyone who's included as a potential co-producer, all the chain of title documents, everything will find its way comprised and summarized in regards to the terms in the collection agent management agreement that is the heart of the production that everyone signs. It's a very transparent document because everyone knows everything about everyone. And that's beautiful. So there's no like, oh, I'm going to give this person a different deal than this person, even though they're doing the same thing. None of that. Just have to remember that every deal you do is going to become transparent to everyone else the minute you have the collection agent management agreement, which is why these deals need to be industry standard and they need to be professional, and what they need to include is what we're going to talk about in the legal class when we put that together. But just know that that's what the collection agent management agreement does. So then you've had all your finance sources, you have all the deals done, you're now sourcing everything, you're now finalizing everything, and now you are in the process with the completion bond company to finalize everything. They look at all these agreements as well, and they will issue what is called the closing, which means all the money is now ready to be released to the completion bond company, who then releases it to you in accordance with the cash flow plan that has to do with the production schedule. And at that time, you can start production. When you don't have a completion bond company, you do all these things just the same, but you're putting it in a production escrow account that maybe is managed by your lawyer or by you and your lawyer, but it still would do the same thing. The thing is that you don't want to start shooting a movie without having all the money in place in a specific account just for this movie. That's the idea behind it. And of course, you have all the insurances for production, etc., applicable. If you don't have a completion bond insurance, you have a production insurance that does most of it. Completion bond company is an added layer of security because it also includes budget overages, and it includes making sure that the movie is delivered on a certain date. Those two levels of added security are required by most banks. Most banks will not give you money unless you have a completion bond insurance, often required by investors who have done this before, who have invested in movies before, and they just know. So that's something for you to think about. The production is actually, in my view, the most easiest part. I mean, this is when I get to relax. I get to sit down, have coffee on set because everyone's doing whatever they need to be doing. My line producer is running the show. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Everyone is on track. Production's going. I just look there and watch and fix. The only time I will put my coffee pot down and focus again on what's going on is if I have to fix a problem. There's always something, and I have to make a decision. There's always something. But it's, for us producers, the very time when we're like, okay, let's enjoy the fruits of our labor by making all these people put our idea into reality. It's kind of a beautiful time for us to be on set. So that's what happens during production. And then what you might find is that, things might take longer, schedule changes occur, delays occur, and then you might have to change the script. Those things are usually what happens. There, delays occur, script has to be changed, can only be changed so much. You have to be careful because you sold a certain script to all these people, so you can't change it too much. But you can change it in a few areas to catch up in schedule, for example. So then the movie is done, movie is finished, movie is delivered on the date it was supposed to be delivered per the sales agency agreement and the pre-sale agreements, right? All is out, and then it's been shown at the marketplace, and now the unsold rights are now being sold. That's what happens next. As the movie is finished and delivered, people are paying. The distributors that bought the pre-sale rights are paying because they're now getting the movie. Remember, when they first started with you, when the pre-sale occurred, they paid you 20% down on the license fee that they will pay for the movie. They only pay 20%. That's all they pay. That's the highest they'll ever pay. Some only pay 10, some only pay 5. Most people pay 20% down. And then they pay you the 80% when you deliver the movie. The movie's finished and is now being delivered to them. That's when they get the money. So now that time occurs, the movie is now finished, and that's when they pay. But at this time, the movie is finished and is being seen on the festivals. This is also when the other buyers are now buying the movie, because now they see the movie and it's great. This is when the domestic buyer comes in and says, oh my God, we love it. That's when they buy. So a lot of this happens the minute the movie is being delivered and introduced in the marketplace as a finished movie. Unsold rights are being sold, and the buyers that pre-bought, that have done pre-sales with you, will pay. So now is the time to collect the distribution revenues, which is the revenue phase. And we're only collecting the first run revenues because all we're doing and all we've done, we just sold only the first run window. Could be 3 years, could be 5 years, 10 years, maybe people don't really buy it for a long time anymore. But that's all that happens. So meaning that if that window is finished, you can sell it again, which would be the second run window. Doesn't really apply here at this very moment, but will apply later when the movie becomes part of a library, like it becomes your residual income library component. So in the revenue phase, we want to make sure that everyone knows they need to pay the collection agent. the sales agent will put one account number in all the agreements, and it's always the same. It's the account number of the collection agent in connection with your movie. No sales agent gets money, no producer gets money, nowhere else is the money going. It goes to that one account that is controlled by the collection agent. And the collection agent then looks at the karma agreement and says, who do I have to pay when? Okay, the sales agent needs to get paid their sales fee. The sales agent needs to get paid their expenses. The bank needs to get paid the loan. We're starting to pay down the loan. And then the equity comes next. And then the profits are being paid. So this waterfall, which is established in the collection agent management agreement, is being basically handled and managed by the collection agent. And they'll issue reports every time something comes in. Every time someone pays, you get a report. Every time something happens, you get a report. Not just you, the investor, the distributor, the cast, the director, everyone who is participating in the movie, potentially as a profit participant, or someone who has an expense, or someone who has a cost against the movie, will get a copy of that report. Very transparent, only happens if you use a collection agent. And I cannot tell you how many very experienced producers don't even know collection agents exist. It's pathetic, but it is. I'm spreading the word, making sure that happens. And the reason why is this level of transparency is what investors love. And that is why it's easier to attract an equity investor when you tell them, I'm going to have a collection agency that operates like an escrow agency. I don't get the money. The sales agent does get the money. No third party gets anything. Only the escrow company, that is the collection agent company, will get the money, and they will pay the way you and I agreed in the investment agreement, where I'm disclosing to you, via investor, that I have to pay my bank off, that I have to pay the sales agent their sales fee, and I have to pay these and these and these things, and then I'll pay you. So the collection agent management agreement is a mirror with its waterfall to the investment agreement you made with the equity investor. So that's important to know, and they love it. So it's important for you to put that in your pitch deck as a mitigation tool. Very important mitigation tool. So then everyone gets paid per the contractual obligation in the karma, which includes the loan, the investments, the expenses, the profits, etc. That's a waterfall. That's what we call a waterfall. If people get paid in a certain ranking order. The only time the ranking order does not apply is when the profits are being paid, because everyone has a certain percentage as a profit participant as to what they're getting, and they all get the money at the same time in connection with the percentage that was contractually agreed with them. Do we have questions about this? Okay, so we talked about the chain of title, and we have to make sure that the intellectual property from the inception to its exploitation is handled properly, and there's no problems in the chain of title. Here I'm giving you an overview of the different agreements that you can apply. You have the option agreement. The option agreement secures the exclusive right for an idea. Could be anything, any IP, the book, the newspaper article, someone's life rights, a script, anything. That's what the option agreement does. The option agreement does include the fee for the option, the term for the option, as well as the purchase price for the rights. The rights acquisition agreement is a little bit like an option agreement without the option. That's kind of what it is. So what you're doing here is you're telling the screenplay writer, I'm not doing an option with you. I'm buying your script out. I'm paying you $20,000 right now. I own the script forever. You can do that. You can do that, by the way, at any time, even during the option. But you can also just buy the rights and say, I'm going to buy these rights. I'm going to give you money right now, and you go away. And I'll do whatever I want. That's a rights acquisition agreement. That's something you can do. And the rights will then go to you, including all the underlying rights that are connected, unless the underlying rights weren't secured. Let me give you an example. One movie that I did with Halle Berry was based on a book. And the book writer had an option with a producer, with that very producer that shall remain nameless, who had the project before me. And those book rights were actually expiring during the time that I was doing a deal with the producer to take those rights away from him and just us financing and producing the movie. And thank God, I was like, hold on a second. wasn't this script that you guys worked on based on this book? And let me check the book rights. And sure enough, the option was running out. So I had to also pay for another option on the book. So it's important for you to understand that the underlying rights have to also be secured in connection with a script that's being sent to you if it is based on something else. So the underlying rights have to be controlled by you, and the script has to be controlled by you. So it's very important that you keep both under check and not just buy the script and then you're like, okay, the underlying rights weren't, because if you don't have the underlying rights, you basically have nothing. It's very important. A writer's agreement is basically the regular writer's agreement where an original script was written by a writer, where you do a writer's agreement with them to say, I'm going to buy your script, but I'm also going to, and it's kind of a mix between option and rights acquisition. It's kind of normally what you do, but I want to also include all the rewrites I want you to make, which I normally do in the option and purchase agreement. I put everything at once, but some people do it differently. So I want to point that out. It basically means that the rights go to you and that you make an agreement with the writer. If he or she has to do rewrites, what you're going to pay for them and when you're going to pay for them. And then there is the writer for hire agreement, which is based on an IP that the writer does not own, that you give them, which in Susvana's example was a book that you have optioned and you give them to write the script based on your directive. Or it could be an idea that you had that they will execute. No rights are with this writer, they're all staying with you. And then there is the development agreement. And let me talk about that for a moment. When you have a writer that doesn't want to give you an option or a rights purchase agreement and wants to have at least a feeling of control, and some are like that, you can say, listen, why don't we do a co-production agreement? Why don't we do a development agreement where we're basically saying, you and I own the rights together and we develop this project together. You can do that. So they kind of become like your co-producing partner. You just have to make sure that all approvals are with you, because you can't have a situation where you share all approvals. You can share them in writing, but you have to have the final say, because if you as the producer don't have the final say, no one can do a deal with you, because they always have to make sure the other person agrees, and no one wants to deal with that. So they want to deal with one entity, which is you. So that agreement would be, I'm doing a development / co-production deal with you, writer. You'll become kind of my co-producing partner, and I give you a co-producing credit. And we're making the decisions together, but the final say has to be with me because I have to be the responsible party for that. So keep that in mind. The other thing the development agreement works is, you talk to a producer who has a deal with a writer, and they come to you because you have something they need. You have money, or you have certain distribution angles, you have some access that they don't have. You can then do a development / co-production deal with them as well, where you say, we're going to produce this movie that you are, for which you, producer, have the rights with this writer. We're going to produce it together. And here too, the scope has to be very clearly defined. What are you doing? What are they doing? And what happens if no one is doing what they're supposed to be doing? That's very important for a co-production agreement to include. Everyone has a job. What is that job? And what are they getting paid once they fulfill their job? And what do they not get paid if they don't fulfill the job? So that is often the situation with developments and co-production deals. Whenever you do a deal, it doesn't matter if it's an option or rights acquisition or whatever it is, you want to include the turnaround provision. You want to be the one that if you have costs in developing this movie and you cannot get the movie made, you are being paid by whoever is able to make the movie after you. That's why a turnaround provision in rights agreements are essential for you. Now, when we talk about what project should we do, ideally, we want to work on something that's commercially viable. And when I say commercially viable, it is a unique story that can create a demand, not just with actors wanting to be in it, but also buyers want it because it's unique and it's a great idea and it's just different. Doesn't mean that this genre has to be different. It's still a thriller action movie, but the story and the view you're taking in telling that story is different than what people have seen. So the genre is the genre, and that's fine, but the story within the genre needs to be unique and different. And your job is to guide the writer to make that happen. So if the writer, does a movie where you know, the Russians are the bad guys, and they do all the things we expect the Russians to do. And yeah, okay, it's an action thriller, and it may even have Jason Statham in it. But we've seen this movie 1,000 times. The Russians are always the bad guys, the Germans are always the bad guys. It's always kind of the same. And you know, the world is coming to an end, and someone's gonna explode, and it's always kind of the same. You can tell a story like that if the way you tell the story is different. If the Russian, maybe the bad guy is partially a good guy, and he has a good reason to doing these bad things. So kind of twist it around. Give me something within that concept that I haven't seen before. That's how you stand out. And that's important for you to know, because the genres are saleable. Thriller is saleable, action is saleable, comedy is saleable with, you know, certain exclusions. I would actually say romantic comedy in that case is saleable. Horror is saleable. I don't do horror, but it is a very, very strong genre where you don't even need strong cast for it to be worked. You just need a strong director that has done a good horror movie before. Those are very saleable. It gets tricky when we're talking about drama and when we're talking about art house. Those are the two genres that are trickier. And I think we talked about that in the distribution class, simply because they're very execution driven. And they're very hard to pre-sale because we don't really know what the movie's going to look like when it's finished. Because it's a drama story, drama usually is slower. Art house, we don't even know kind of what the movie's about. So those genres are harder to sell because they're very execution driven. And the only way to sell them is with a very strong director and a very strong cast in the lead. If you have, you know, Nicole Kidman in your drama, chances are you're going to get it made. If you have your cousin who's a great actor in the lead, chances are it's not going to get made. Unless you make it for very little money and then it breaks out and it becomes a coda, you know, and gets sold to Apple for $26 million or something, twice the budget. But you can't build a business model on that. You can't build a business model in saying my romantic comedy is going to be the next My Big Fat Greek Wedding and make $370 million. That's an outlier. You cannot base your business model on that. And I would even say to you, don't use movies like that in your comparables that are outliers, because they're not really something you can base a business model on. Use like the middle things, you know, they made some money, that wasn't a total dud, and I will use those as my comparables. But the main thing here is commercial genres, action, thriller, horror, sci-fi, also strong, romantic comedy. All these are good genres. They will sell commercially. The harder thing to sell is drama and art house, unless you have A-level cast and A-level directors. So when we talk about what defines a commercial story today, it's not just the genre, it's also the structure. Now, in the Western storytelling world, we hear, and for the most part, Western means the US, Europe, a large part of the buying community in the world, we work with scripts in the 3-act structure, 5-act structure if it's a TV show, but it's kind of the same, it follows the same structure where the first act is to introduce the incident, introduce the genre, introduce the character, introduce their dilemma and the issue that they're facing, and putting them in real dire straits on how they're fixing it. It's also the same for the romantic comedy. There is no dire straits, but there is a romantic comedy. We know the two are getting together at some point, but we're setting them up in the beginning that we're really excited to follow them on how this romantic story will unfold. That's the job of the first act. We get to know the characters, we get to know their quirks, we can already see how their traits are going to be problematic and they're going to create issues. We already see that, a glimpse of that in the first act. And that's what the first act job is. And the first act is usually around like 30 pages. The second act is usually around 60 pages, and it's around that, where in the middle of that second act, you have a huge turning point. That means that the story is going in a direction you were not able to foresee. And in general, you cannot write a script or read a script or have a script go out the door where what a character does or what happens to them is predictable. You also can't have a story where what happens to them drives the story forward. It needs to be the other way around. What their decisions are, the shitty decisions they make, that's what creates the issue and drives the story forward. The exception is the inciting incident in the beginning. What happens to them in the beginning, which is what the movie is about, is something that is from the outside. That is okay. For the first act, that is perfectly fine because that's what the movie is about. After that, everything they do, everything they decide, every trait they have, every conflict they face, and no matter what the genre, their decision and their stupidity, for lack of a better word, is what drives the story. So when I read scripts where stuff happens to an actor, where stuff happens to my protagonist and antagonist, I'm already done. This is a way of telling story that was done in the 80s and the 90s. We're not telling story that way anymore. Today, stories are told through the eyes of the character. The character makes decisions. The character drives the story forward. The character is the driving instrument. It's always been like that in TV shows, but it's now like that also in movies. If you watch a TV show, you know that what the character does is driving the series forward. That's a normal. We're used to that. But in film, we're not so used to, because usually stuff happens to the characters and they're reacting to it and then they're trying to fix it. So now we're in a position where what our character does is what drives the story forward. And what they do impacts the other characters, the good guys and the bad guys. We also have a situation where the bad guys are not just bad, they're also good. The good guys are not just good, they're also bad. So the characters today are multifaceted. They have different levels and different traits, and they're all very colorful and interesting. It's not like in the 80s and 90s where the bad guy was bad and the good guy was good, and that's it. No more. We have to be very clever in our structure and plots that we create characters that are multifaceted. So the 3-act structure, to come back to that, is in the beginning, we have multifaceted characters, and we can already see where the conflict is going to unravel later. The second act is dealing with the conflict, and then in the middle of it goes us totally off rails with the whole new thing that we didn't expect. And then the end of the second act is going to lead us into the third act, the end of the second act being a cliffhanger, creating jeopardy, creating a problem. Things don't at all work out. It's the same for all genres. And then the third act is about how do the characters deal with this new situation that was created. And then it slowly resolves. And in an action movie, you have the showdown in the end. In the romantic comedy, usually have things adding up, and then you have the wedding in the end. But no matter what genre it is, this structure applies to the marketplace that we are selling into today. That's why we need to know about this. And it's the same for every genre. Art house movies, horror movies, comedies, thriller, action, sci-fi, it doesn't matter what genre it is, this applies. So for you as a producer who works with the writer, you have them focus on things that haven't been seen before. Don't give me a character where I already know what they're doing next. Tell me something that I did not expect them to do. Tell me something, show me something that hasn't been there before, that hasn't been done like this before. So the writers are really put on their toes to come up with scenarios that are new and fresh. And the more you do of that, the higher the likelihood of your project selling, because that's what buyers want, and that's what the audience is craving. Which is when you see Netflix with its spaghetti on the wall kind of content, it's like some of it is great, most of it is like mediocre, and then there's definitely a lot of stuff that's not great. Apple, when you look at their content, a lot higher quality. You see ideas that are out there. I mean, look at Severance, look at Shrinking, how they write it. I mean, even Ted Lasso is like, you're thinking something is going to happen, nothing's going to happen, it's all good. So they come up with these new concepts where we as a trained audience expect something that they will not deliver on. And that's why we like watching this. And so you do see higher quality content on certain platforms, and you compare it to other platforms. We all watch content on platforms these days, so I'm not even going to go into network stations and whatnot. But if you look at how the content is structured today, you'll notice the difference. You'll notice that your brain is taking you in one direction, you're expecting this to happen, and then something totally else happens and you're surprised. And that's what gives you the entertainment. And that's how you have to think about guiding your director and your writer in understanding that the story needs to be told in a way that's surprising, unique, and fresh and innovative. This is very, very important, because that is the way for you to attract talent. When an actor reads a role where someone does something very unpredictable, they're very excited. And the likelihood of you attaching someone that is an A-level actor is very high. So I put a little more detail here into the 3-act structure where I say what is what. And this goes for all the genres. And any of you who are writers already know this, and you can just go home, have a coffee. But the setup is important. On a movie script that's about 90 pages or 100 pages, the first third of it is what the setup is. And it gets us hooked. It gets us sucked in. At the end of that first act, there is a huge question mark in our brain. That's the job of the first act. The second act is longer, as I mentioned, 50 to 60 pages. It basically presents the journey, which hopefully is not predictable, and a shift that they have to deal with. So the journey of the character and their challenges and the decisions they make causing challenging outcomes is what the second act is all about. The third act is the resolution. They are finding a solution to the crisis. They are finding that their goals are maybe being met, but differently than they thought they would be met, for sure. And then you're ending up with a hopefully satisfying ending at the story. It doesn't have to be a happy ending, by the way. It just needs to be satisfying to the audience. And that's how you conclude the third act. What's happening here with this thing here? Let me just do this done. So you can have a story that is not told linearly. So you can start with the ending and then go backwards. This has nothing to do with the third act structure, because the third act structure still is the same. You can start with the ending and say, they're all going to die, here's how it's going to happen. And then you're going to go forward, and then you start telling the story. By the way, that happens a lot, which I like that storytelling sense, and it happens a lot in TV series as well as movies. You're allowed to do that. It's still within the third act structure. It's still the same. So the order you jump around in is totally up to you. You could even jump back in time. You're still going to find the 3 acts to be applicable. You're just using the jumping in time as a storytelling styling tool if you want, and you make it more unique that way. And that's absolutely fine, and that's absolutely something you can do, and it can match whatever genre you're choosing. And it helps, it mostly happens with thriller, action, sci-fi genres, not necessarily always with romantic comedy, but it could happen with romantic comedy as well. So let's talk about, do we have any questions about this so far before I go into packaging? Okay, here's packaging. The job of the package, the talent package, is creating value. The script is the script, and that has to be good, but the package is what elevates it, what gives it the value that we need. So important for us is we need to have ideally a strong director that's experienced. We definitely should always look into spending money on one actor that is someone we've heard of. That's an important thing because it really elevates the value. We have conversations where, and this happens a lot, where producers and investors come to me and say, yeah, we're just going to spend, a few $100,000, and we're not going to really want an actor in there, and we just want to tip our toes into the industry. And I tell them flat out, I said, you're going to lose that money. Unless it's a horror movie that bowls out, unless it's an extremely interesting art house movie, or it's something truly unique that just somehow finds its legs, I'm telling you, you're going to lose your money. If you want to make a $100,000 movie, do that, be okay with losing that money. It would be more sense to say, I'm going to make that $100,000 movie, but I'm going to spend $500,000 because I'm attaching an A-level actor. Okay, now it's $600,000, 6 times what you actually want to spend, but the likelihood of that movie making money is much higher. It's not always smart to save in that scenario because your movie needs to stand out. There's so many movies when you go to the American film market that are being released every year. A lot. Your movie can only stand out through the face that is on the poster that we've seen before and that we know. That's how these movies stand out, and that's where the buyers go. Because the buyers, distributors, they need that for their marketplace. They need to have a face on the poster where people are going to go watch the movie, or people are going to switch on the streamer or the network station channel to watch the movie. Who is in it is always the question. So even if you do low budget, think about the one actor that you can attract, where you can put some money into to create that value that you have. And if the script is good, it doesn't have to be a high budget movie. If the script is good, they will attach. And if the director is good, it doesn't even, if the director, let's say, is not experienced, as long as they have a vision where the actors say, I trust your vision. I trust that you know what you're doing, and you have an experienced producer on your side, which also helps, but I trust your vision. Then you can have a first-time director doing this. There's nothing wrong with it, and then you really have to have a strong producer on their side. So that's a combination to think about. Ideal would obviously be a director that has a track record, because that's the easiest, but if you don't, there are options. So when you meet with the director who is the first talent you attach, you're going to sit down with them and you're going to say nothing. They talk to you about their vision of the script that you sent them. They'll tell you, here's how I see the movie. I see these color palettes. I see this budget range. I see these actors. This is my vision. So let them talk. Let them talk. They love talking. Most directors love talking about their vision for your movie. And here's what's going to happen. The vision the director is sharing with you matches yours. Perfect. You can hire this person. The vision that the director shares with you doesn't match yours. You should not hire this director. The vision that the director shares with you is actually better than yours. You can hire this director. But if the director sees a $10 million movie and you want to make the movie for $2 million, that's a problem. So they will not share with you their vision if you guide them and tell them yours first, because they obviously, they want to get the gig because they like the project. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting there with you having lunch. So when they ask you, so how do you see this happening? You say, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your vision. I'm not quite sure yet. You can just say that, even though if you are, I'm not quite sure yet. I'd love to be inspired by what you're thinking. Who doesn't like to inspire? I mean, of course, then they're going to go talk. That's the conversation you want to have. I had a movie where I didn't do that. And the director decided to rewrite the script just before shooting, knowing we didn't have enough time to change him out, to do anything about it. And the changes were so drastic that the lead actor decided they didn't want to be in the movie anymore because they didn't agree to that script. They agreed to our script. And then the director thought, because there was only 2 weeks to get started with the shoot and we were, just about to close the bond company, they thought they had us by the balls. Well, I'm a German. That never happens. But even regardless with that, I found myself in a very peculiar situation because I said to the director, you got the script that I sent to you based on which you signed an agreement with me. And now you're bombarding us with the vision that you have that's not only changing the genre, but is also a vision that the actor or lead actor does not agree with, nor do I, nor will the buyers, who we pre-sold my version of the script to. So I want you to understand, dear director, there is no scenario where I can shoot your rewritten script. Directors don't know how movies are made. They don't know that there's financing involved. They don't know how all the intricacies, but it's not their job. It's a producer's job. So he's like, well, maybe, but I'm not going to change anything, because he didn't know what he was creating. So he thought I'm bullshitting him. I'm not the bullshitting kind. So I fired him. I just had to. And the bond company was like, what did you do? You fired the director 2 weeks before shooting. And they were yelling and screaming at you, and they were about to fire me from my own movie. But the reality was I didn't have a choice. I wouldn't have had an actor, and all my pre-sales would have basically disappeared. So there wouldn't have been a movie regardless. So then they wanted me to find a different director that the bond company would accept. And I did. And I was very lucky in doing it. And I was very fast. And thank God, I worked day and night to get it done. But I got a director who they accepted. And we had to delay the movie a little bit, but at least we got it done. So I don't want you to be in that situation, because with the delay that happened, my producer fee went to pay for that. So I basically made this movie for the joy of making a movie, which is not always joy. I made zero money on this movie because I had to fix that problem, and the problem had to be fixed with the director, who now had to work its way into the movie so that we can get it done properly. So my fee was gone, and I mean, the movie turned out great. Everyone made money other than me, and that's okay. But the point is, I don't want you to be in that situation. So when you talk to the director, the only way for you to know how the director sees your project is if they tell you without knowing what you're seeing. And that's how you make the decision to attach the right director. So let's say they like the movie, the vision is the same. You would then say, okay, well, you're great. Of course, we talked to the sales agent. The sales agent also thinks you're great, so we're going to attach you for this. The way you attach them is a pay or play offer or a development offer. And here's the difference. The pay or play offer is a very strict agreement where even if you don't make the movie, you have to pay the director's $500,000 fee or whatever you agree. Not ideal. So it's better to do a development deal with them where you say, while we're putting the movie together, I'm going to use your input and help, and I'm going to pay you X. And when the movie is finished, we're going to pay you, when the movie is ready to go, we're going to pay you your fee in full upfront on the first day of principal photography. Obviously, we're deducting what we paid you during the development phase from that fee. So the cost component is the same, but the contractual component is a little different. So the development deal is what you want ideally. You don't necessarily want to do a pay or play offer. Sometimes the agents will tell you, we're not doing anything unless there is a pay or play offer. And you can say, yeah, we can make an offer for this amount, but I'd like it to be structured as a development deal. Most of the time they say yes. These are the things you need to just work. And when you have an experienced executive producer on your side that has that conversation with the agent, where the agent knows they're talking to someone who knows the game, it's also hugely helpful. This is why you want to really kind of combine forces with someone who knows how to navigate the agents, because it's not an easy navigation to undertake. Talent agents, doesn't matter if it's for directors or actors, they're never really pleasant. It's just part of their job because they have to protect their clients. So you can't really be upset with them about it, but it's not a pleasant experience. So it is better if the executive producer that you hire to consult has that conversation with the talent agent so that they know, okay, we can do a development deal, that's fine. Then you have the director. We already mentioned that, how you're going to do it, but the development funding has to come from somewhere. That is where your pitch deck that we mentioned earlier come into play, because the equity investor that helps you should ideally be the one, or you have a different development financier, by the way, should ideally be the person that helps you with these costs. Because if it's not them, it's going to be you. So you have two options. It's either you paying for all these upfront development costs, or it's you and an investor maybe paying together, or it's an investor who really believes in you to do this. For an investor to do this, it's probably someone that knows you and that knows that they can trust you. It's not likely going to be someone that's a total person that just, that doesn't know you, because why would they put money up for your career where you haven't done anything to show that you actually know what you're doing? That's a very unlikely scenario. So just understand that first money for that very first movie has to come from you and or someone you know that where they trust you. It just has to, for this development phase. No one else who doesn't know you and you don't have anything to point to that you've done in the past will be stepping up. Unless you're an experienced producer, that in that case it would be different, of course. But in a situation where you're new, you have to have an equity investor in play. Now, when it comes to cast, the way we get there is we're going to talk to the director. We're going to talk to a casting director as well. That's another one who comes into the mix early on in the development phase, because the knowledge that the casting director has about what a specific actor is looking for right now in their career, what we can get away with paying them right now in their career, how we can approach them without making a pay or play offer right away, is priceless. That's why I always work with casting directors, because they're just closer to the source. And the casting directors always work with the agents. So before I have to start fighting with agents, I let the casting director have that conversation. So it's something for you to think about. And then, of course, you would use a casting director who works with A-level talent, where you see they have been on movies that include A-level talent, because chances are they're the ones having cast that talent and have a relationship with their talent on very many movies. So that's your first line of defense also for the script, because the casting director might say to you, yeah, if you want that person, they're not, that script, I'm sorry to tell you, is not strong enough. They'll tell you, because they're not going to go out and have egg on their face by sending an actor a script that's not good. So it's also good feedback on the story that you could get from them if they're honest. They might just say to you, I'm not right for the project, which is basically them saying your script's not good enough. It's a nicer way of saying it, but it all comes out of the same thing for 90% of the time. So casting directors are important. The director, of course, is important because the director, if they're experienced, might have worked with one or the other actor that you want to work with, and you want to use that relationship, and you can use that relationship. The director is likely to reach out to the agent and say, you know, when we worked with so-and-so on this movie that I did, I'm doing another movie right now that I'm very excited about with Jeanette, and I'd love to talk to this actor again. What are your thoughts? That's a nice in with an agent that the director will open the door for you, that you can then walk through and say, yes, here's the script, and we're going to do it with this director. So you and your client can feel very safe because you're going to be in safe hands with this director. So what are your thoughts? And then the agent will say, well, I need a pay or play offer. I need this, or, you know, I just need maybe a little down payment, and we'll take it from there. So there are options of negotiation that you can have with the talent that represents cast. Yes, Robert?
Yeah, with casting directors, how do you get them to start talking to you and doing everything that you've talked about? I mean, do you have to pay them first, or offer to pay them, or
Yeah,
get
well,
them
you
a
do it.
contract? How does that work?
It's a development deal that you do with them. So you would go, it's similarly than what we talked with Ellen about earlier on how to attach a producer with you, right? The producer is important because the casting director will also look at who's producing. So if you attach a consulting producer, you can tell the casting director who you source by looking at what are similar movies than mine with the cast I want, or what are movies in the same budget range with the cast I want, and who are the casting directors on those. And then you contact them and say, I am Robert, I'm producing this movie with Jeanette, experienced producer, as an example. I would like to talk to you about a development deal to cast this movie. So they know A, you work with a strong producer. They know B, you're going after someone that they already have worked with. And that's usually what opens a conversation. And you can just email them. Their contacts are normally on IMDb Pro. And that's what I would do. I would send them the pitch deck and the script with exactly that text in an email and say, we'd like to talk to a development deal. And then what happens is the development deal is usually something where we agree a casting fee with them, you know, depending on the budget. And you say, I mean, if it's a low budget movie, casting fee is somewhere around like between $10,000 and $30,000. If it's a higher budget movie, it goes up. So that's kind of the range we're thinking, right? And you say, okay, we're going to give you we're going to do a development deal where we pay a portion of that upfront during the cast, maybe like half of it, ideally less. I try to get away with 30% of whatever the casting fee is during the development phase. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The most I've ever paid is 50%, just so you know. So $15,000 on a $30,000 deal is the most I've ever spent. It really depends on who you're talking to, but that's kind of what I'm saying. So then you do the development deal, and obviously it goes against their fee. So it's not like you're losing money. It's just like you're paying it in a different cash flow plan. Now, if you're not making the movie, that money is gone. But if you are making the movie, it's a line item in the budget that you then get paid back, or the development investor gets paid back. So that's kind of how it works. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and does the money that you spend, if for some reason it goes into turnaround, does that become a turnaround
All right.
cost?
Yes. All the development money that you spend if you don't make the movie is turnaround. That's why it's so important for you to keep all the receipts and to make sure that you have a paperwork that shows what you spent on that movie, because that becomes very important in the turnaround phase if someone else makes the movie and you were not able to.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I like to do, and I want to talk about the kill fee, not kill free, kill fee provision. And the kill fee provision is this. In the director's deal, I have a paragraph that says, if I have you, the director, on my movie, it doesn't matter experienced or not experienced, and I am going out to A-level cast, and they say to me, we love the script, we love working with you, Jeanette, but we really don't like the director, I'm going to fire the director because the cast is more important. And then I'm going to talk to the cast and say, what director are you envisioning? Who do you like? And then I go after those. And in that situation, I have a kill fee provision in my director's deal that says, if I don't choose you, you're going to get $10,000, maybe $20,000, because I have to let you go. And that's something that you need to put in there. Now, the kill fee provision can be something you can also put in the director's deal to avoid the legal ramifications of a pay or play offer, where you say, listen, I know I should be paying you $1 million because that's what the offer says. I'm not making the movie, or I need a different actor because your actor, for some reason, the market value changed. It doesn't work. Can I let the actor go, and can I pay them $100,000 to go, or whatever the number is? You could try to do that. In some cases, I was able to do it. In other cases, I was not. It's a negotiation that you can bring to the table, but I just want you to know about it. It gives you flexibility is what I'm saying. So it's something to think about, because you do otherwise have a situation where you are legally obligated to put this person in your movie, and you're also legally obligated through this pay or play offer to pay them even if you don't make the movie. Yes, it becomes part of the turnaround, but it comes out of your pocket, and it's a pretty high fee, because chances are you're going to have an actor in there that's at least $252 million if we're talking about some A-level person in a low-budget movie. So it could get very expensive. So the kill-free provision, I think, is an important provision for you to think about. Now, what an A-level actor is for a movie is a showrunner for a TV series. Showrunners are what sells our TV show. So when we have a TV show, we're developing a Bible and we're thinking this is the best thing after sliced bread. But I, for example, let's say, have only produced movies and I'm an experienced movie producer, but I haven't done a TV series. The network or the streamer will basically say to me, yeah, you know how to do movies, but you don't know how to do TV series. So find a showrunner so we know that they know what they're doing. So I then go to agents and basically do a development deal with the showrunner, which is similar like a development deal with the director, where I bring the showrunner in and say, this is a TV series I want to produce. This is the Bible that I've written. This is the pilot that we have. You know, do you want to, what are your thoughts? And sometimes they rewrite the pilot, sometimes they rewrite the Bible, sometimes they don't do anything. They love it the way it is and just put their name on. We're going to go out, pitch the show. So that's kind of the situation with the showrunner, but you still make an offer to them that's similar to like a pay or play, where you say, I'm going to pay you something during this development phase, and I'm going to pay you X when the show is greenlit. That it's a similar attachment conversation than you would have with the director. And you can also put the kill fee in there. If the showrunner is unable to sell the show and you find a better showrunner, you can let them go. So you can put that in as well. So in that sense, it's similar. It's just for you to know that with the TV show, I mean, great cast is always good to have, but it's not necessarily a must-have. The most important role for TV shows is not even the director. It is the showrunner. The showrunner is someone, so you know who that is, who is often been a writer on other shows, and they wrote a lot of episodes. They come from the writing camp. So they're very experienced writers on successful shows. And then they get elevated to become a showrunner to run the writer's room. And they become the lead writer, if you want, or the lead instructor to instruct all these writers to get them what they need. That's how the showrunner career normally works. So you can have a situation where you want to have a showrunner. You can't pay for the top-notch showrunners that are already showrunners, but you have your eye on someone who wrote a lot of episodes on CSI, sorry, and your show is like CSI, and you see this one writer has written a lot of episodes on CSI over the years, and they have not been a showrunner on a show. That's not a bad person to keep in mind and contact their agent for, to say, listen, this writer has written 300 episodes on CSI. My show is very similar. I want to make him a showrunner. How is that for you? Thank you so much, Uli. How is that? Can we do that? The agents will like the conversations because they are also interested in upping their client into a showrunner position. So like, yeah, they're ready. There should be showrunner. It's about time. I mean, they've written 300 episodes on CSI. They should be running a show. So they might like this. So there is a conversation to be had that could be beneficial for you and could be beneficial for any buyer that says, yeah, we can see this person because they really know what they're doing and they've done a successful TV series. So that's for you to consider a showrunner where you can actually do a development deal with someone that's realistic and experienced. Yes, Suswana?
How does that work for a reality TV series or a docuseries?
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. When you have a development series, when you have a reality or a development or a documentary series, you also need a showrunner / executive producer who has done something like this and done well. So same thing. they are your actor, so to speak. Because in documentary shows and reality shows, you have real people for the most part that are part of that show. I mean, there's no like, maybe you have a host that's Brad Pitt. I'm just thinking out loud here, silly. But short of that, it's real people we're talking about, or it's a real subject we're talking about. So the casting is not really a thing there, not in the A-level section or the A-level level that we're talking about for film and television here. But there you need this kind of experienced producer as well. They become your showrunner. And you need the sizzle reel on top of it, because these actors, no, they're not really actors, but the people that the series is about, they need to be TV worthy. They need to be appealing. And if they're boring, that's a problem. So outgoing characters, some interesting characters, a situation that's interesting, that's what we see in the sizzle reel. And that is what the casting replacement would be, if you want. That's why the sizzle reel is important. Yeah, great question. Thank you. So working with a sales agent, that's something that needs some massaging as well. Sales agents make money because they get content, new content for every market they enter, for every market they go to. They go to the Cannes Film Festival, they need at least one new project. They go to the next one, that's around the corner, then Berlin Film Festival. Actually, Berlin is before Cannes. They need a new project. Then they go to American Film Market. They need a new project. Then they go to Toronto. They need a new project. Then they go to NatP, which is a TV market. They need something new. All of these markets happen within 1 year. They're all in 1 year, within 1 year. Starting in January is Sundance, going all the way down to American Film Market in November and in between. They need something new for every market so that then buyers are coming to their shop and they can sell the new with the old. It is important to attract the buyer with something new. So they have a tendency to want your content. So that's good, but you need to make sure that your content fits what they're actually selling. You're not going to go with a horror movie to a sales agent that basically sells romantic comedies for the most part, and all the posters are about romantic comedies. So we talked about that in the distribution session. But it's also important that you go to a sales agent that is excited about what you have and that they give it the priority it deserves. So it's a sales agent that doesn't go out every market with 20 different projects. They might have 1 to 5 new projects every market. Usually they have lesser. So you don't want to be bunched up with a chunk of content that they're trying to pitch to buyers where yours is just one of them and it kind of sinks in the pitch. You don't want that. You want them to specifically focus on your project for that market. So the question is, what are they bringing in for the market that your project is going out for? Is there something else they're introducing? What is it? Is it similar to yours? Similar budget range? Similar genre? That's okay. Is it better than yours? Even better. But because then yours is in the mix of something good. But if it's 5 different things, that's a problem. So that's something you need to be careful with. You also don't want a sales agent who doesn't want a collection agency. Many sales agents will tell you, oh, no, we're selling this, the distributors pay us, and then we pay you. A lot of sales agents are trying to do that. And your answer is always going to be, it's not going to happen. I need a collection agent where the money is going to go to. It doesn't go to you. You get paid by the collection agent. That's the only way we're doing this. And they have to be okay with it. And when they know you know, they usually are okay with it. But they're not going to just offer it up to you because they kind of don't want to. So just know that that's what you want. You also want someone who actually goes to the leading film markets. No, Cannes is too expensive. We can't really pay for the yacht this year. And the booths are so expensive at the Palais du Festival. Yeah, that's not someone you can work with. You need them to be there in person with your project. That's what you pay the marketing fees for. So they need to be there and they need to make sure that they're there. You also want them to give you sales estimates before you're signing up with them. If someone says to you, yeah, we're going to take the movie and we're going to give you the estimates after we sign up with you. No. You want them to, and even, the worst scenario is you say to them, okay, give me a range. If you don't want to do the sales estimates in detail, just give me a range, what you think you can make with the movie and how many pre-sales you think you can make. I mean, that's something that they could put in one line in an email. It's not that much work. They know exactly how much your movie is worth and they know exactly what they can pre-sell. They know. And if they don't want to share that with you, that's not someone you want to work with. So that's important. They will also say to you, yeah, you know, pre-sales, that's not really a thing. How many times have I heard this? It's not really a thing. And that's entire bullshit. Every movie I have financed had at least 50% pre-sales, 50% of the budget pre-sold at minimum. And why? Because these are commercial movies with actors in them that we've heard of. So if the sales agent says to you, I can't pre-sell your movie, that means your movie isn't strong enough. They want it anyway because they need new product, not helpful, or they're lazy. Both is not helpful. You need someone who says, yeah, we can do pre-sales on this. I don't know if I can do 30%, but I think I can do 20. It's okay. Just give me something you can do, but don't say pre-sales are not possible. That's not a good thing. They also will say to you, I want 35% of a sales fee. That's possible. People ask for that. You should not be paying more than 25%. So just know that. And they'll say to you, I want your movie for 25 years. Yeah, that's not necessary. You can give him for 5, for 7, for 8, maybe 10. And then you can say, you know, once you've done it, if we're, you know, all happy after the first 3 years or whatnot, we'll have an option to extend. Short term with options to extend based on their delivery. Are they meeting their estimates? Then you can extend. If they don't meet the estimates they gave you, why would you extend? They're clearly not doing their job. Why would you keep the movie with them? So those are the situations you really want to take care of. Of course, they need to be bankable, which is important not just for you and for the bank, but also for investors. If the investor is at least a little bit smart, they will know that the sales agent would have to be approved by the bank. And if they're not approved by the bank, the investor should not be investing. So that's something that is important. It's also something that should be in the investment criteria when you make a deal with the investor. And these are the main things for sales agents. Yes, Robert?
Yeah, with pre-sales estimates, when you're first starting out with a sales agent, I know it's different after you've worked with one, you trust them and all, but usually, how can you trust their sales estimates? How do you know that they're telling you the truth?
If they're bankable, they do, because here's what happens. If they give you estimates and you go to Comerica and to say, here's the estimates that I have from XYZ, it's actually a company called XYZ. And the bank says to you, oh yeah, we will bank them. We've done deals with them. Then you know those estimates are real because these estimates are what the bank will look at in order to give a loan. So if the bank says, yeah, we haven't worked with them, that basically tells you there should be concern because these estimates may or may not be valid. Bankability is an insurance for you that these estimates are real.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So when we talk about a feasible budget, it's really about shifting our budget to what the market can bear. It's really what it is about. And when you see there's an Adrian Ward interview, Adrian runs the entertainment finance division, I think right now at Pacific Mercantile or East West, it's one of the others. He moved around a little bit, but he tells you right up front, he said, the feasibility of the marketplace is what guides everything for us at the bank. And it's the same for investors and it's the same for producers. So that means if you want to make a movie for $20 million and the sales estimates for the international marketplace are $7 million, you're going to be making that movie for $10 million maximum. And you need to adjust. I got a movie the other day sent to me, $19 million action movie with a name in it and a director that we've known. And I look at the budget, I'm like, and I look at the script, I'm like, this movie should not be more than $12 million because I don't see how it could make more than 10 million in the marketplace internationally. I just don't. So I called the producer and I said, I know you want to make this for 19 million. I don't think it's feasible. And maybe the script needs it. And I would agree with you, in order to make a quality movie, it's probably better to spend 19 million, but the marketplace is not going to pay for 19 million. The marketplace is going to pay for 12 million. And I'm not one to want to lose money already on the surface of it. So what are they doing? They're changing the budget and they're changing the script because they have to. So changing the budget is not just, oh, we're making a decision now. It's not 19, it's going to be 12. It's a decision they're making based on changes they have to do in the script. Less locations, less scenes, maybe combining locations, maybe combining characters, combining character traits, reducing the number of characters, reducing shooting days. All these things are happening when this conversation occurs. And it occurs pretty much every time. So it's okay for you to know you're going to have to face this. You have to apply to create a feasible budget. You cannot overly be overpaying crew. Sorry. Hello, good morning. Need more coffee. Look at crew rates. Do a deal with maybe IATSE if it's a union or the guilds and say, I only have this much money. Your rates are too high. Can we do something about it? I can't make this movie otherwise. And maybe they'll agree with you, lower rates, which I've done and it has happened. So crew rates can be lowered. Cast always have to be feasible. You have to squeeze the agents as much as you can. Any service providers, try to negotiate them down. I mean, these are all logical things to begin with, but you're going to have to do all that. And the way you basically save money is by condensing your script. Every scene that you have in the movie, in the script, has a function. And every scene has a specific function that is, it moves the story forward, either through action or through information that I need that I didn't know before. And you would be surprised when you ask yourself that question with every scene, how many scenes in that script do not have a function? Those need to go. And I can tell you, they'll be going in the editing room regardless. You might as well not shoot them. So when you go through your script at this very moment where the sales agent is bursting your balloon and saying, sorry, not happening, 20 million, it's got to be 10. You're going through that script first and you're going to say, what scenes can I throw out? How many characters do I have? Can I combine them? The story still works. How many locations do I have? Can I combine the location or find locations that I can multi-purpose for all the things I need so I don't have to have company moves? Every time you have a company move, it's 3 to 4 hours, half a day gone. That is not going on the screen with 150 people on your crew that you all pay hourly. No go. So you want to make sure, keep the company move to a limit. Every time you can roll, that's where the money is spent. How much time can I spend rolling? How much time do I not want to spend moving, dressing, building, lighting? That's all important. So research also in regards to post-production costs. What is the cheapest post-production house? Today, we have so many post-production houses. You really have a choice. They all want your movie. So you can pick and choose. You can say, I don't want to pay as much, or I don't have as much, or I need you to defer. All of this works with post-production, also visual effects houses, because they're also a dime a dozen. And you want to talk about the sales agent, also about the sales estimate and saying, is there something I can do with the package to up them? And the sales agent might say, you know what? The script's a little slow. It reads more like a drama. If you speed it up, I can up it because it's now a thriller. Or the cast, if we have this cast, maybe we can do better in the cast. Maybe we should think about this person versus that person. Or maybe we'll add someone in the second role that can elevate the value. The conversation always needs to be with the sales agent and the line producer. And it's a combination of both that will get you to a feasible budget. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I never thought of combining characters as a way to cost cut.
Do this
So
a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
and it
that's
happens a lot. You would be surprised how many characters you have in a script that are very similar. You're like, yeah, that doesn't need to be. That can be one person fulfilling all the functions, you know?
Wow. Amazing. Thank you.
In order to get the movie on the screen, as we mentioned, for TV, we need track record proven showrunners. We need budgets that are feasible, where the buyers can actually afford to pay you the license fee that you're asking for. We need unique, strong, fresh stories that can jump off the page, that are different, that are not predictable. We need mainstream films with casts that we know at least one of them, and track record proven directors, or at least track record proven producers. These are the things you need. These are the 4 elements that are absolutely important that you need to make sure exist in order to get your project on screen. You want something that is feasible, not just from a financial point of view in regards to how much money the investor makes, but also from a market point of view, where you say, I'm bringing something fresh to the market that we haven't seen. And I also understand what the buyers need, and I want to cater to that. Because the marketplace today is very finicky. These buyers have such pressure because there is so many outlets for distribution that offer so many things, that the fight for eyeballs is a constant fight. And if you think about what gets eyeballs to watch a show or to watch a movie, it's usually the genre and the cast. And that's your sales, that is your sales tool right there. Because when you go to the movie theaters and maybe it's not a DC comic or like a, like a franchise, a huge, tentpole franchise that you're watching, because they go without saying. But if it's a movie, it's just a general movie that you want to watch, a thriller, an action or something, you always look at who's in it. Let's be real. You're not going to pay $21 for a movie with people you haven't heard of. And the same applies for everyone around the world, for the most part. Yes, there are outliers. I'm not going to say they're not. There are art house movies that break through. All of these things exist. But we're talking about a finance model that can be stable and reliable. And we can therefore not include outliers as the rule. So we have to look at what can the frugal marketplace handle and how can we support our project in regards to that marketplace and what does it want. So obviously mainstream genre films with a defined audience and valuable packaging and a feasible budget, as we just discussed for the last hour or so, makes sense. But there are also the low to mid-level art house films that can be meaningful if they are somewhat in a story sense that could be applicable for a potential Academy Award consideration. Normally, those movies do have an actor in there that we've heard of. I mean, I watched the movie Tar, was it last year? Was it Kate Blanchett, I believe? I mean, I'm sorry to say, but I didn't understand the movie. But that doesn't mean anything because I don't understand art movies to begin with. But I loved her performance. And obviously, it's her performance that is amazing. And that's why people watch this movie. And that's why it had an Academy Award. But the reality of it is when we do an art house movie, someone has to pull the train. And normally it's an A-level actor of some sort, or A- or B+, something. And that's how we can make a low to mid-level art house movie happen. And that's what we should focus on. We need a content piece that can travel and expand outside the US. We have a situation in the US where we like certain comedies, comedies about body fluids and, these X-rated comedies that we have. They work great in the US. Not so great all the time outside the US because the taste buds about those kind of comedy is a little different. Romantic comedy, okay, we can all rely on, the fact that love is important for people and they want to see people happy. That's fine. That's a travel-worthy concept. But other comedy, because sense of humor is very different depending on where you go. I mean, look at Germans. They don't have a sense of humor. I mean, everyone always dies at the end of our movies. Do we watch comedies? Yes. But the point is, we have to look at the fact that the culture of the buyers and their audience is different. So therefore, we have to cater them stuff that we know can work for them. And that's why romantic comedies work and thrillers and action. And those are genres that work worldwide. Now, there is an argument to be said for local language content, right? If you come from France and you want to make a movie in French for the French audience, there's nothing wrong with that. And many times, as we see today, local language movies, French movies, German movies, Italian movies, they travel outside the country. They travel outside their local audience and make money. That's beautiful, but you can't build a business plan on that. So when you make a movie that's local content, make it for the local audience and make sure that it pays for itself with local distributors. That's what you focus on. And then it can travel outside. That's gravy on the icing cake. So that's fine, but that's how we look at local language. When we have low budget indies that are geared toward festivals, also good. You can do those too. But they have to be so good that the festivals we're talking about, where they are accepted, is the level of the Sundance and the Toronto and the Tribeca and the Cannes, and the likely of those. It cannot premiere at like a low-level festival that we've never heard of or that people don't value. But if you have a low-budget indie movie that gets accepted to one of the leading festivals, you can actually have something that makes money, even without cast in it. So that's definitely something that I would say has value. Is it going to be easy for an investor to invest in it? No, because the likelihood of pre-sales and things to occur is lower because we don't know, is the movie going to be accepted by a festival until it's finished, and it is. So the risk the investor takes is higher. If they're okay with that, there's nothing wrong with making it this way. feasible budgets are important, and that is together with experienced, people in the team versus, directors or producers and definitely cast of some sort. Those are the things we want to focus on. But the other thing that I want to put your awareness to is non-scripted content with strong stories and interesting characters. It has never been a more interesting time than now for this content to actually be meaningful and viable and financially interesting. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, documentaries were like, okay, well, one or the other would be seen in the movie theaters. And other than that, it was very hard to make them, and it was even harder to make money with them. Now, it's an absolute valid piece of content to make because there is a huge demand in a way that I've never seen it before. So that's definitely something. If you like telling stories and you're okay with non-scripted content, this is the time to make it. So when we want the market to give us the elements we need to deliver to them to make it feasible for us, we need to define the audience and the genre. We need to define our distribution strategy. We need to define the budget range, and we need to define the finance plan. The finance plan has to be a balanced finance plan like the one we talked about last week. The budget range needs to be supported by sales estimates. The distribution strategy is your sales agent that is bankable. And the audience and genre for the film needs to match. What genre is it? What audience are you going for? If you are going for X-rated audience, harder to sell than PG-13, just so you know. Exception is horror, because that genre follows different rules, because it is what it is. It's horror. We do want to verify the market demand for our content always, and that is the pre-sales. We don't necessarily need the US pre-sale to be in place, and we also will not have a situation where the bank will ever value the US as more than 0, but the international sales will make a difference as the estimates are supporting and the pre-sales are supporting the estimates in order to verify the market demand. It is always better to go with the sales agents that offers conservative estimates. And if we don't get pre-sales, we need to consider the fact that something with our project is simply not there yet, or the timing might be off, because sometimes you can have a very cool project. Like, look, Queen's Gambit took them, 10 years, 20 years or something to make this amazing series. You probably run around saying, we're going to make a series about chess, and everyone was yawning in their chairs. Chess, really? And now you look at Queen's Gambit, it's one of my favorite series. So it always depends on the timing and how you do it. And of course, the actor, and of course, the way they're written the script, and of course, the showrunner. All these things come into fruition. Someone figured out, I have to create this element around the boring chess part in order for it to be interesting. So that's our job as producers, to make something interesting and be able to verify the market demand early on, so we know we're on the right track with it. The frugal marketplace, we're going back to the sales estimates and numbers, would dictate that in the ideal case, we want to see 70 to 75% of our budget being returned from the international marketplace only. Ideally, you want to see 35%, even 30 is okay, from the US market to be given to us after the movie is finished, and that's why we use it as an estimate. Incentive should always be at least 20%. We're not shooting anywhere where we can get 20%. Brand integration and music investment can support that. So let's say incentives are slightly below. If the brand integration and music investment push it up, you're fine, but the non-recoupable finance component should at least be 20%. In-kind services and deferments are okay, and all of this can be a combination to create a feasible finance plan. But this market dictated structure, I would say, is something that has been applicable for many, many, many years, and it worked. I mean, we've done over 50 projects like this, as I mentioned, over $250 million production volume later. It has always worked. And it's not just made up. It's something where banks rely on these numbers, investors rely on these numbers, sales agents know these numbers. This is a structure everyone is aware of. And even though people say, oh, the industry is changing, it's changing, it's changing, it doesn't change in regards to that, because that is needed for something to be profitable. And if it goes better, great. If it goes lower, this won't apply, and then movies can't get made, or the budgets have to go down for the movie to get made. This is kind of the golden rule for you to make something happen. But let's say it doesn't apply. So let's say whatever we just talked about right now is not the reality with your movie. Do we throw the movie away? We do not. we have options. And here are 3 options that I'm just going to throw at you for you to think about. How do I shift the scale? How do I shift the balance in my finance plan? If something doesn't happen, I don't want to throw the movie away. Where do I go? Where do I look? What do I do? In the first option, we're not hitting our 70% estimates. We're getting only 60%. That's not enough. So that's basically 10 less than what we want. We are thinking about the US being 35, so that stays the same. We have only 20% incentive. We're not hitting 30%. Not ideal. But we have 5% branding. So what do we do to solve this problem and to pick up what we don't have? We're going to increase the incentive, meaning we're shooting the movie somewhere where we can get more money. That is one solution that you can think about. Second option is 65% projected sales, still not 70, not totally great. 35% US, we just do that because we think that's fine. Still don't have quite the 30% pre-sales that we want. So those 2 things are not flying. The bank gives us additional headache because they don't want to give us 20% gap. They're only giving us 15%. The incentive, okay, we get up to 25, but we have a movie that the brand really likes. So we're getting more in branding. So we're picking it up with the branding and at slightly higher incentive to kind of balance things off. And in the last situation, it's even worse. We only have 50% estimates. We shouldn't actually be making the movie because on the face of it, it doesn't make money. We still want to make it. So what do? We still don't have the pre-sales that we want. And the bank is even more stingy now. They're giving us only 10% gap. We are shooting the movie where we can get more incentives, 35%, and we are pushing the brands hard to give us 10%. What it all comes down to is we're getting an ROI that is more than 20% or 20, and that's what you want for the equity investor. If you have less than 20%, you should not be making the movie. These finance examples will get you there. When you think about how do you save the cat, so to speak, how do you save your movie without, putting it back on the shelf? You look at your finance elements, and whatever doesn't shape up needs to be rebalanced. When you have low pre-sales, we have 20% pre-sales instead of 30% pre-sales, but you do have 70% estimates. I'm not worried about the pre-sales. As long as the ones that I have that are less than 20 are supporting the estimates, I'm fine. I'm just going to either increase my equity, which is also okay, and not going to change my risk profile as the equity investor, or maybe I'll increase some of the non-recoupable finance sources, or I do a combination of the both. So that pre-sale component being lower doesn't worry me as long as the sales estimates are high. But if the sales estimates drop below 70, I need a non-recoupable finance source or in-kind services, worst case deferments, to pick up the slack. So I have to shoot somewhere where I can get more money. I might have to get more branding, definitely music investments. I might have people defer some money. I might have to get some in-kind services or a combination of those. This is what needs to then, as a combination, pick up whatever is less than the 70% that I want. So that's something to remember. So the examples that I'm listening to, these are the finance plans in connection to it. You can go through it at your leisure. We talked about the fact that you have to look at your budget in connection with the market. It doesn't work any other way. When you produce shoes and people pay $50 a pair, and your shoes to make $100, you're not going to make those shoes. I mean, it's a similar thing for movies. It's straightforward. We have to look at what the market does. And because right now, the market is really not strong and reliable when it comes to license fee payments, they're all lower. They have been lower for a while. I don't see them going up. Honestly, I wish they would, but I don't see it happening. Because we're dealing with lower license fees, we have to reduce our budgets to match up the situation where buyers can just not pay as much anymore as they did before. And the only way for us to do it is balancing the finance sources, lowering the budgets, making it for a feasible amount, and still not touching the production quality, which is why the areas that we talked about in saving, they're not areas where I say, don't do visual effects the way you want to do it in a big way. Just make a deal with the visual effects house to reduce some of their costs. Don't change the equipment and the lighting. High quality equipment, high quality cameras, You know, don't do anything that can harm the physical look of your movie at all. You have to be very careful. There are areas you don't want to touch when it comes to reducing the budget, because you need the visuals to be glamorous and beautiful. And you also don't want to do anything stupid to the script that changes the genre or makes the story just not readable, because now you've thrown out so much that the story doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, it's a given, but let's be real about this. The trick is to apply the changes where you can afford them, but still having a project and a script that people want and a budget that people can pay for. So I'm giving you some examples here of what should be in your budget. What are some industry standard rates that you should be paying for? So when I am going by my budgets of what I have spent on things and what I'm spending on things, this is very different than what maybe other producers do. Might even be different than what you do, but I can only share with you how much money I spent on certain line items. I've never spent more than 5% in rights and related purchase agreements. I don't ever spend more than 15% in producer fees, nor should you, because the bond company is going to kick your bottom, and everyone else will too. 15% is the max for producer fees. I try to avoid spending more than 10% in legal and finance fees. For the most part, that works. I don't want to spend more than 5% in conclusion bond fees. For the most part, that has worked too. I've never spent more than 5% actually. It did change a little bit during COVID, but we're not dealing with that right now. I don't spend more than 3% in marketing fees. This is not P&A campaigning money, by the way. This is just a marketing fee that I'm paying to the sales agents so that they can do what they do at the markets, Cannes Film Festival, American Film Market, etc. They get paid for that work in addition to the sales fee. I usually don't spend more than a third on post-production in my movies. Above the line, meaning cast, the highest I've ever spent is half the budget. I mean, you know, for a $20 million movie, 10 million in cast, it's quite a bit, but we had it and I've spent it. It makes more sense when you have a low budget movie that's maybe $1 million and you want like an A-level actor in it that's also $1 million. So that's where this will come to fruition. I've never done more than 5% contingency, but I've seen people do 10, and you would do that too if you don't have a bond company. And I'm usually no more than half the budget in the below the line. So these are kind of my numbers for line items that can be, you know, can be applicable to a normal movie that's commercial today. The bond company is something that will be applicable if you have a movie that's more than $3 million and you're using a bank. The minute you use a bank for pre-sale loans and gap loans, this will be applicable because the bank will not give you money unless you have a completion bond insurance. There are companies like 3 Point Capital and some others that cash flow pre-sales without a completion bond company in play. So you can think about using those, but you're not going to get gap money. There are also investors that may be okay with there not being a completion bond company. We don't do movies without a completion bond company, but I know other investment companies and other production companies sometimes do. Depends. I want the insurance of budget overages being covered and the film being finished and delivered on time. And that's what the completion bond company does. They look at all the agreements that you have and they value everything. And they look at your line item very closely and they talk to you and they talk to the director and they talk to the distributor and they have an accountant that they insist on approving and they're having a line producer that they insist on approving. Those positions have to be bondable. And they're very communicative with you where they think you are at risk in going over budget, which is good for you to know. Use them as your friend. Use them as your guiding post. Use them as the people that can help you make the right decisions in adjusting your budget in a professional way. It's great when you don't need all the money that the completion bond company wants you to spend. That's great. But it's not great if you ignore their advice. First of all, you won't be able to because then they're not going to bond your movie. But it is important for you to know early on where you need to shift your budget and what you need to pay attention to, where they see risks and red flags. So it's good to know. I use them as partners rather than nuisances. They become a nuisance if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing because they can fire you off your movie and you probably never bond a movie again. So there is that. Never happened to me. But I do think it is smart to see them as a company that will help you ensure everything will stay on track. The collection agent is that too for the investors and for, you know, anyone who is putting up money and getting money and people that are doing profit participations because they offer very clear transparency because the collection agent management agreement, as I mentioned, and the waterfall and the reports will all show where the money is coming from and where it's going. They protect your revenues because the money is not going to the producer and it's not going to the sales agent, both of whom can go bye-bye or go belly up or bankrupt, and then your movie is in trouble. They monitor everything to make sure that everything is supposed to be done the right way. They require the sales agent to send all the agreements in. So they also help you keep the sales agent on track, which I like. And they're the ones paying all the expenses and loans and all the investments back, which everyone likes. So this is someone also like the completion bond company that's on your side. You can have a collection agent and not a completion bond company. They're not mutually exclusive, so you can have one, not the other. But they are a very important element to have if you want investors. When we do TV series, it's a little different. And we're nearly done here. Television series is the only piece of content where I would say, and this goes for scripted and non-scripted, it is important to have a US buyer in place, because the international marketplace doesn't know how to buy and how to value a TV series unless it's on a US streamer or network. They're like, yeah, this sounds great, but it's not streamed in the US and not aired in the US. So how do we know this is worth anything? So they get nervous. So this is the one place where I would say you should aim to secure a US deal with a network or a streamer. You should have a showrunner that's exciting, that can help you close a US deal, which is usually what they do. You want to always shoot them in a high incentive state because you need that free money. You want that free money. You want to work with the sales agent that does work with the sales agent. Sorry, that's the wrong word. Who has similar series. They're not like a lot of the sales agents that I work with on my movies. They don't sell TV shows. So it's a whole different brand of people, and you want to make sure that you know who they are. You want to do low budget niche TV movies, something like, so we're not talking about a TV series. We're not talking about like the Hallmark cutesy TV movies, romantic comedies, right? They don't necessarily need cast either. But you better make sure that you do have a Hallmark deal in place, because if you don't, it's very hard to sell these movies internationally unless there's someone like Hallmark or a US buyer that bought them, so the international marketplace knows it's a good movie. That's the problem when you don't have cast. So I would never do a low budget TV movie unless I have some deal with someone in the US. And then you want to always look into co-production options, especially for TV series. I was telling you earlier about the TV show that I'm developing, and it's being shot in Germany and Belgium because the combination gets me 60% of the budget as a subsidy, which is very exciting. And I do that with local partners. So the same would apply for you. TV series that can be shot internationally, for example, have a very high chance of getting a lot of subsidies, and that's something I want you to look into. So in summary, when we want to optimize our profit potential, it's all about picking the right sales agents, looking at the right incentive regions to shoot, do our research with the banks early, do make sure that the sales agents are bankable, look at the deals in regards to in-kind services, brand integration, music investors, etc., anything that's non-recoupable early. We definitely want to use collection agents, and we should think about using a completion bond every time we have more than $3 million in a budget. Do we have questions? No questions?
Just one.
One.
So for the showrunner, if you're attaching a showrunner because you don't have experience doing a TV show, etc., does the creative decision, do they get final say then versus you?
No, I mean, I don't give anyone final say because I'm responsible for the financial part, and so are you. So I would say if for example, they say, well, listen, who are you? I'm the showrunner. I've done 50,000 shows. I will make the decision. You can say, well, I'm kind of the person that has to find the money and that attaches the money. So they kind of want me to keep an eye on this. But what we can do is we can agree that the final decision is with the buyer. So in that case, it would be the network that acquires the show, or the sales agent that would acquire the show and would sell the show that you would give the final approval to. Do not leave it with the showrunner. And if they don't trust you, have the buyer/sales agent be the tiebreaker.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else? If not, If not, then I will let you go for today. And I'm just looking at when the next class will be. I put it in. We're not going to meet next week. We're going to meet again for the next session. Hold on. It will be the, checking it out. Can't find it now. Well, I'm going to send an announcement around. So I'm going to send an announcement when the next class will be, when we're covering the next session, session 4. And then in the meantime, if you have any questions, please reach out. If you work on a project, the extra credit project, continue that work because you're learning a lot of the things that are now supposed to find their way into your extra credit project pitch deck. So these are the things that should all be included. And then for office hours, I'm going to do office hours today. And I have a few people that signed up, and I do see a few open spots here. So if you feel like you have questions that you want to just address with me, sign up. We meet at the same link, and then we can talk about that. And I will circulate this recording as well. Hold on, did I miss something in the chat? Oh no, David. Yes, thank you, David. If there's any questions that you have as you digest this material, please feel free to reach out and just send me an email. We can do a one-on-one also when it's not on a Saturday, if I can make that work and you can make that work. Okay? In that sense, I will now let you go, beautiful people. Have a beautiful weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, Janet. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Aaron. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Robert.